What would you do if you were about to give birth on a stormy night, unsure of how you would pay for the delivery? This was Charlotte's reality as she walked alone down a deserted road, her slim figure almost invisible under the torrential rain. The cheap umbrella she carried flapped against the wind, leaving her clothes soaked. Cold water streamed down her face, but she barely felt it. Her mind was consumed with worries. The growing weight of her belly was a cruel reminder of the situation she was in. Her heart felt tight, and desperate thoughts echoed in her mind, drowning out the sound of raindrops hitting the asphalt. "What am I going to do?" she whispered to herself, the uncertainty weighing heavily on her chest. "What if something goes wrong? What if I can't manage?" Meanwhile, Stephen Curry was driving calmly, enjoying an upbeat hip-hop rhythm that filled the cabin of his SUV. He was returning from a charity event, satisfied that he had helped several families, but his mind was already on the next game ahead. Suddenly, the headlights illuminated a solitary figure on the road. A woman, alone and pregnant. Curry immediately slowed down, concerned about the unusual sight. He parked the car and rolled down the window. "Are you okay? What are you doing out here in the rain?" he asked, his voice revealing genuine concern. Charlotte hesitated for a moment, her voice caught in her throat. Who was this stranger who cared about her? But the compassion in his eyes encouraged her to respond. I don't know what to do anymore. My baby is coming, but I don't have money for the delivery. I don't have anyone to help me." Curry was silent for a moment, absorbing the gravity of the situation. He knew he could just drive away, but something about Charlotte touched him deeply. "Look, I'll take care of it. I'll pay for you to get the best treatment at a hospital. Don't worry about anything else." Curry's words sounded like music amid the chaos, and Charlotte, incredulous, broke down in tears. "Thank you. Oh my God, thank you. You're an angel." Curry got out of the car, grabbed a jacket from the trunk, and wrapped it around her. Then he helped her into the vehicle. "Let's go. I'll take you home and make sure you're safe until the baby arrives." Charlotte simply nodded, still sobbing, feeling that for the first time in months, there was a glimmer of hope in her path. Charlotte settled into the passenger seat, still wrapped in the jacket Stephen had offered her. The warmth and safety contrasted with the torrent of emotions that overwhelmed her. The car glided down the wet road while the rain continued to pour as if the sky were mourning her pain. But next to Stephen, she felt a bit of hope. He seemed determined to help her, and that motivated her to believe that maybe everything would turn out all right. However, as the journey continued, a new worry began to take shape in Charlotte's mind. What if the hospital didn't have available beds? What if Stephen really couldn't afford the costs? These doubts consumed her, and she found herself looking at him, trying to decipher his intentions. He was a famous man, but he was also just a man, and she didn't know him. How could she trust him, even if he had been kind so far? Stephen, on the other hand, was focused on the road, but his mind wandered to what he could do to help this woman. He had heard stories about people who took advantage of others' generosity. What if Charlotte was one of those people? He didn't believe that was the case, but the doubt nagged at him. At the same time, he felt a connection with her, a determination to do whatever it took. "Where do you live?" he asked, breaking the tense silence. I don't have a fixed place. I was trying to find a shelter, but I couldn't." Charlotte's words echoed in Stephen's mind, and he felt guilty for not realizing the severity of the situation. He couldn't leave her without support. The idea of taking her to a hospital popped into his head, but he knew he needed a more solid plan. Besides, the rain and wind made the road dangerous, and with each turn, he grew more anxious. When they finally arrived at the hospital, Charlotte was on edge. Stephen parked the car and jumped out, rushing to open the door for her. He helped her out, holding her arm as the rain continued to fall. "Come on, "You're going to be okay," he said, trying to convey confidence. Inside the hospital, the atmosphere was chaotic. People moved quickly, and cries of pain and anguish echoed through the hallways. Charlotte felt her heart race. A nurse approached and, seeing Charlotte's condition, took her to a triage room. Stephen stayed by her side, determined not to leave her alone. Minutes turned into hours, and the tension mounted. Charlotte struggled against the approaching pain, while Stephen tried to calm her. He realized that his role extended beyond just ensuring she received the necessary treatment. He needed to be an emotional support. However, he also felt powerless. He knew he couldn't alleviate her pain, no matter how much he wanted to. "You're strong, Charlotte. You can do this," he said, holding her hand. However, the situation began to complicate. The doctor entered the room with a worried expression. "We need authorization to perform the cesarean. The baby's heart is showing signs of stress." The doctor's words cut like a knife. Charlotte looked at Stephen, her pale face reflecting the terror she felt. She had no money, and the idea that the baby might be in danger paralyzed her. "I will cover all the costs," Stephen said, his voice firm. "Don't worry, Charlotte." But the nurse intervened, explaining that even with Stephen's offer, the financial issue still needed to be resolved. Charlotte felt her world crumble. How could she put her child's life in the hands of a stranger, even if he seemed genuine? What if he changed his mind? What if in the end it was all in vain? I don't know if I can," she murmured, tears streaming down her face. Stephen felt the pressure increase. He had never imagined that his good deed could turn into such a complicated dilemma. He needed to convince Charlotte that she had to fight, not just for her life, but for the baby's life. But how could he do that? "Look, I understand your doubts, but you need to trust me. I will do everything I can to ensure that you and your child are okay." At that moment, Stephen's phone vibrated. It was an urgent call from the team, but he couldn't leave Charlotte. Stephen looked at the phone, indecisive. The responsibility for Charlotte and her child weighed heavily on his shoulders, but the demands of his job were also urgent. However, the image of Charlotte, pale and desperate, made him make a decision. "Wait here," he said, quickly getting up. "I'll take care of this." He left the room, promising to return as soon as possible. With the phone to his ear, he negotiated with the hospital manager, explaining the situation and ensuring payment for all costs. Meanwhile, Charlotte tried to gather herself, searching for the strength to face what was coming. When Stephen returned, his expression was one of relief. He had managed to resolve the financial issue. "It's all good, Charlotte. We can proceed with the cesarean." With a lump in her throat, Charlotte nodded. The medical team took her to the operating room, where she was prepared for delivery. Stephen waited outside, impatient, hoping for news. Hours later, a doctor emerged from the operating room with a smile on his face. "Congratulations. You have a beautiful, healthy baby boy. The mother is also doing well." Stephen felt a wave of joy wash over him. He rushed to Charlotte's room, where she was resting with her child in her arms. "He's perfect," Charlotte whispered, emotional. Stephen ran his hand through the baby's hair, feeling an instant connection. He knew his life had changed forever. In the following days, Stephen visited Charlotte and the baby in the hospital and gifted her a car. He became a constant figure in their lives, offering emotional and financial support. He felt fulfilled for having helped someone in need and for creating a new family. Over time, Charlotte fully recovered and found a job. She and Stephen remained close, building a solid friendship. Stephen helped her find an apartment and settle in. He became not just a friend, but also a father figure to her child. The story of Charlotte and Stephen spread throughout the city, inspiring many people. Stephen's generous attitude served as an example to others, showing that a small act of kindness can change someone's life. Years later, Charlotte and her son were watching a basketball game. Stephen was on the court, leading his team to victory. At the end of the game, he spotted Charlotte and her son in the stands. He smiled and waved at them. In that moment, Charlotte felt a deep gratitude for everything Stephen had done for her. She knew that without him, her life would be completely different. And her son, growing strong and healthy, was proof that kindness can create miracles.